so much, and please help me welcome our finalists, Lynne and Mark.
Can people hear me? Yes. Okay, good. I want to thank Josh and Forrest for their help in making this event possible, and to all those involved in supporting VCP. It's amazing to have this vibrant community resource right here in Brattleboro. Some of us started working on it like back in the 90s, and to see it grow and support this many people and students and just activities in general is really, really wonderful. And I want to thank you all for coming and for taking time out of your Valentine's Day to celebrate our shared love of photography and have these conversations. Okay, why this conversation? I'm quite nervous. I talk to students all the time, but I don't usually talk to adults. So I'm kind of shaking and I have notes. So just, you know.
You're among friends.
I do realize that. It's a very nice audience. But just if I look at my notes and hesitate a little bit, you'll know why. Okay, we're having this conversation because I knew that Mark collected photography, but I had no idea that Mark collected photography. I came to this opening and I was like, oh my God, this has to be seen. And I was like, Mark, are you giving an artist talk or a gallery talk? And I went to Josh, and I was like, are you giving a gallery talk? Is he giving a gallery talk? They were like, no. And I was like, that's wrong. Let's have a gallery talk. Okay. So I was like, well, you know, do you want me to help facilitate this? And both Josh and Mark said yes.
Absolutely.
So that's why I'm here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Mark and a little bit about myself. Yeah. Oh, and just, you know, thank you so much for letting us all be here with your photographs.
And thank you for your intelligence here.
Yeah, right. Also, the format, we're going to talk for about 30 minutes. I have some questions about specific images that they're going to put up that are in the show, except for one of them. And then we'll open it up for questions for all of you. And keep me on schedule. If I go too long, let me know. So Mark has had a lifelong interest in photography. He got his first camera, a Nicormat, at the age of 12. Who else had Nicormats here? Anybody? Okay, a few of us. Okay. He fibbed at the age of 13 in order to get a job at a gallery. No, not at a gallery.
No, Ferranti Deghi. It was a photography shop in Cambridge.
And how old did you tell them you were?
I told him I was like 17 years old, and I was at Andover, and I was going to go to Wesleyan next year.
All right. He was exposed to a lot of photographers there, and it was also a really active moment in Cambridge with photography. And
in
all
the 70s.
In the 70s, yeah. Yep. And this environment helped develop his passion. Mark was a fine arts major at Hamilton College in the 1970s, and he spent time at the Visual Studies workshop where he combined photography with printmaking. During this time, he also interned at the Light Gallery in New York City, which was the first gallery to be dedicated to photography. Yeah, and exclusively photography.
Right.
Yeah. Mark wrote, like most kids, I would see photos that influenced me, and then I would stylistically try to make images similarly. Bill Brandt, Callahan, Bresson, Arnold Newman, Cortez, Freelander, Evans, Weston, Siskin, Keith Smith are all a few who struck me. Okay. Now me. I'll talk about me. My background is similar to Mark. I got my first Nicormat in middle school. I think I was 12. I studied fine arts in college. I took photo classes at RISD. I had various jobs in the industry in New York, many of which had me spending hours rummaging through archives, learning about masters, and developing a deep love for the power of an image. I taught photography first at Insight, and then at BUHS, and then eventually at the Putney School for 16 plus years. This includes a class that I am actually still currently teaching about what photography can teach us about history and social change. Mark and I both live in Putney. That's us. Okay. First slide.
Oh, we just gotta tap the.
Okay. Oh, there it is. Here it is. All right. When I came to the gallery, I don't know, are we in the way? When I came to the gallery to see the show, Mark told me a story about this photograph, which he will now share with all of you, because it was such.
I remember I was taking a lot of photographs when I was in high school, and a lot of it was like just of friends, yearbook stuff, all that sort of thing. And I remember my sisters, Barbara and Susan, gave me this book called A Concerned Photographer. And it was one of the first books I really started looking at different photographs, and I was always drawn to that photo and that cortege. And if you ask me why, then I don't know. Maybe because I just saw it in the book, and it sort of spoke to me. And I bought that. I think I was like 13 or 14 years old with my bar mitzvah money. And that was, and Light Gallery carried Cortege. He was one of their photographers, and one of the great things about this show is that I've collected photographs for forever, and this show and this talk is the great awesome thing is that it makes me think about what draws me to a photograph, why I like it, why I collected it. Sometimes it felt like when I bought something, it felt kind of impulsive, and that's because of knowing and seeing them throughout my life, and then saying, oh, well, this is my chance to collect it. And and so that's the story behind that photo.
So I'll tell you guys a little bit more about Cortege, and you can probably, since Mark has a big book on his coffee table, he's reading now, I think, about Cortege, yes?
Yeah.
This was taken in 1954. It tells us that. That's very helpful. After he had immigrated to the United States. So Cortege was born in Hungary. He fought in World War I, yeah?
Yeah.
And he was actually a photographer during World War I. And he then immigrated to Paris and was there during this, in between the wars, right? And actually, let's go to the next slide. So these are also corteges that are in Mark's collection. They're back, one is here and one is actually over there. And these were from the 1920s. Well, 20s and 30s, okay. Yeah. And there were lots of photographers in Paris at that time. He was not the only one, but he was sort of the father of many of them, right? He influenced Bresson, he influenced Cartier-Bresson. In fact, I have a quote from Bresson here somewhere.
Oh my gosh, too.
What? Where was my quote? Oh. So Cartier-Bresson said, "Whatever we have done, Cortege did first. We all owe something to Cortege." So.
Right.
I don't know. Do you have anything you want to add about these guys?
No.
Not in particular? I have a quote about this one. Would you guys like to hear my quote about that one? Yeah. Oh, okay. Cortege said, "I took only 2 photographs. People in motion are wonderful to photograph. No need to shoot 100 rolls like the people do today. It means catching the right moment, the moment when something changes into something else." So he was hanging out with a lot of artists, other artists, right?
Brancusi, all those guys.
Yeah. And she was responding to the sculpture, apparently. Yeah. Okay. We can move on.
Okay.
All right.
Freelander, yeah.
So this is a photograph by Lee Freelander. you want me to give background, or would you like to talk about your...
Why don't you give background, then I'll talk.
Okay. I'll give a little background. But he was born out west, but he moved east. He came to prominence mostly in the 60s and 70s as part of a big wave of photographers in New York. He lived eventually in right outside of New York. His style was different. I don't know what else to say. I have a quote, which I will read. He said, "I am a garbage collector. The more stuff in the picture, the better." Wouldn't you say so? In a sense, it is more fun to add the more stuff you can, and still make the picture. He did what I guess we call sort of social landscapes, right? So he was showing America with in a very specific type of way, a lot of suburbs and empty spaces, actually, and lots of reflections and using things to break up the frame. Pretty different.
What I like to think about is I had a photography teacher who in college who would say, go out and shoot a roll of film. And people say, well, what do I take pictures of? And then you'd see he'd show these Freelander pictures of just life around you. Like in this room, you could take 1,000 photographs, and how he made a person look at their surroundings, and that they're just in your everyday life. There's so many just incredible photographs that you can take. And I don't know, there's some photographs of monuments, of street signs, everything, the world around you. They're makes you look at the world in a totally different fashion, and that was one of the things I loved about Freelander. Because it's also how you kind of intellectually start to parse the photograph, because somebody would look at a photograph and say, well, that's just a street sign, that's just whatever. And the more you look at it and try to understand it, the more in depth and how deep a photograph seems to me.
Okay.
I mean, you could say that about a Pollock painting too,
Yeah, you definitely could. Lots of times he did a lot of traveling in cars. You'll see a lot of cars in his pictures.
We talked about he would travel with John Starkowski, and Starkowski would take 2 photographs, and he'd take 15 rolls.
Okay. How many of you guys know the picture on the right? Raise your hand. That's not everybody.
We thought you were joking.
Nah. I just taught this week the FSA collection to my class at school, and none of them know any of it. It was kind of shocking. So, yeah. So this is Dorothea Lange's Migrant Mother. This is Walker Evans' photograph of William Agee. James Agee. And when Mark and I were talking, he talked a little bit about the importance of history in terms of an inspiration for him. So I don't know if you can address that at all in terms of building your collection.
Well, it's, you can look at a photograph and just say, oh, that's an amazing print over there. But when you look at the portrait of James Agee, I always think of the book Let Us Now Praise Famous Men. And I think of Walker Evans. And so it brings back sort of knowledge of history and what the world was then, and what the photo evokes. If you didn't know that, you might just think, oh, this is a neat portrait of a guy. But then you realize that it's so much deeper once you once you think about that person, what that person did, and what the person contributed to the world. You know. The same with those FSA photographs, what the Dust Bowl was and what that meant to the U.S. And
Yeah, I always wonder, it's interesting, I think, to think about how this picture, I think, in particular, became emblematic of the Dust Bowl. What is it about that photograph? What is it that Dorothea Lange did that made that one picture become this icon?
right.
Since that's a popular word today. And she took like 6 or 7 photographs of this family. And this was the closest picture, right? The closest in picture to them. And it has real resonance, I think, because of that, and sort of a sense of respect. I think her name is Florence. Does anybody know her name?
Yeah, that's right.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Florence, what was her name? Florence Owens Thompson.
It's interesting. I had my teacher, when we were talking about that, and I don't know if this is right or not. This is just how I remember it. I can't remember after lunch. But, he said that when the government was sponsoring these photographs, they were really looking to get sympathy and for us to sort of feel badly about these people. And they ended up hating these photographs because these photographs showed strength and resilience in people, and it didn't evoke the emotional response that they were actually looking for. Is what I remember. I don't know if that's historically true or not.
And why did they want the pictures to? What were they trying to get done? What was the government trying to get done?
New Deal.
Yeah,
Right.
they were trying to pass the New Deal. So propaganda, right? Use of propaganda. This also has such, just in terms of like art history, goes back to the Madonna and all kinds of other references, I think, throughout time. I mean, it just is one of those images that.
Modigliani.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. But there was a bunch of controversy because she actually Forrest was telling me this, right, Forrest?
Dodged and burned in such a way to
Get rid of her
disguise
thumb.
Her thumb was in the foreground,
Right.
wrapping around that hole.
Yeah.
But as like a journalistic role that she was in, it was considered
Not okay.
voodoo to be tampering even with the most
Right.
minute of details.
And it's been interesting in my class. We've been looking at a lot of FSA photographs, and they're all full frame. So there wasn't a lot of cropping going on. The photographers were shooting them in to be actually as they were, and not to be the truth, right? Which, as we now live in a AI-generated image world, where Photoshop is everybody's best friend, it's interesting to think about, right? What does this all mean? Right? What is true? Was it true for her to take out her thumb? Let's see, Lange said, I am trying to say something about the despised, the defeated, and about the last ditch. All right. Moving on. All right, George Tice. This photograph is right there if you guys want to look at it real closely at the end, because it's just a spectacular print. Do you want to say anything about?
Well, everything about it. I mean, the printing, the exposure, the skill in that photograph always just kind of blows me away. You know, the detail, and especially in the darks and all that. I've always just been amazed by it.
Was was hung in the most direct view from Mark's desk in his office. Right behind-
Is this one?
Right behind his computer monitor.
All right.
On and off.
So George Tice used a 8x10 view camera to take his pictures. Do you guys in this room know what that is? Some people are shaking their heads, yes. It's a very big camera. You get lots of resolution, right? It's like many, 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 many pixels, right? And he came to be seen as the photographic bard of New Jersey. I say that from my friend Liz McLaughlin in the back row there. He traveled the state with this 8x10 view camera shooting pieces of urban landscape. And this is considered his most famous photo. Did you know that?
No,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. It is a mobile station at Cherry Hill. Is that what it says? Yes, Cherry Hill. And his daughter said in an interview, he never gave up. I'd be in the dark room with him and we'd evaluate a picture and he'd say, I think we need to make a few changes. And we would do it over. And I would think it was good, but he would say, no, we need to do it over. He said, the everydayness of life gets in the way of the eternal. I contemplate how this photograph will be seen in the future when the subject matter no longer endures. Taking a picture is indeed stopping the world. So that was his
So
quote.
then that means the negative is 8x10.
The
Yes.
negative is 8x10.
Right.
Yeah, so this big.
Wow.
Big, heavy camera to lug around. Pain in the butt. Makes you really think about your composition before you click the shutter. One piece of film per time, right? So really different than an iPhone.
And not only that, he was his own system guy, right, Josh?
I would imagine so.
Yeah. And so, Josh can speak more eloquently than I can on that. But in terms of, it's a very, very complicated way to figure out an exposure of what your negative is and what your picture is supposed to be. And sometimes people were kind of against it because all of a sudden the picture is about the process and not about the content. And like, I don't know, if you take pictures for as long as you do, sometimes you go through times where it's like, okay, everything has to be full frame, you can't change anything in it, and otherwise it's not pure, And I don't know, I know when I was taking photographs over the years that, I would always go through different, thinking about what a photograph should be, and that's always morphed,
Well, and Mark, I remember you and I talking at your place about this image and how the ultimate, one of the ultimate goals as especially traditional black and white art format technical photographer is to be able to have both a captivating subject and such level of technical expertise that, as opposed to those who do a lot of hands-on work to their image that feels photoshopped,
right.
to have the technical hand of his skill and craft disappear, and to be able to achieve a natural, clean aesthetic that does not feel like someone, very well may have spent multiple weeks honing and perfecting and making test prints to come up to a final product. To be able to get to a point where that just disappears and all you see is the experience of imagining what it was like to be there, and the experience of being like, oh, gasoline was 53 cents a gallon. Snow tires were $24. Like, that's amazing.
I never even noticed that.
You're just looking at the richness of the darks, right?
Exactly,
We had about snow tires recently.
To get this deep range of blacks, dark shadow here, to get them to stand out against each other is definitely, anybody who's tried to print a negative in their life, that's really hard.
Not to have any dust.
And not to have any dust. Yeah. Actually, let's go here. We're going to skip ahead. We're going to go to these.
Great.
Because this is Arnold Newman. He was an environmental portraitist. We discussed.
Yeah,
Yes,
right.
we did. And Mark was telling me something that I didn't know about his photography. I assumed he was a in the frame kind of guy.
Oh
but
God, no. He would take an image and then, like, he has a famous one of Igor Stravinsky where, if you look at the full frame, Igor Stravinsky's like down here, and he crops the piss out of this photo just to get that, and that for a while that kind of turned me off. Like, I get turned off because Ansel Adams would use ferrocyanide to bleach out, pieces of driftwood or whatever, and I always felt like cheating to me. But Newman, he would, and this was also a book that I had when I was, 15, 16 years old, looking through life, and you'd see these pictures that he would do of artists, and they were, their work was reflected in their actual portrait of who they were. And there's this one of Haile Selassie, there's these pictures of
everybody. He
everybody.
photographed
And you'd always make them, and I always thought that was very, very interesting.
And he would crop.
Crop.
Is
crop.
it okay to crop? Big question.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Can we go back to Salgado?
Sure.
All right. This is an image by Sebastião Salgado, who's a Brazilian photographer. Is this the most latest picture in your collection, like year-wise? Is
No.
this?
For one of the St. Louis Freelanders in 2002.
Yeah, those two.
Oh, okay. I wouldn't have.
Just from what we brought.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have. It's funny. So the Freelander has been very consistent, hasn't he? Because that could have been 1970.
Right.
Anyways, Salgado is a Brazilian photographer. He was trained as an economist, and he gave up his charts and numbers and took up a camera. He is known for photographing issues of labor and immigration. He died last year, I think.
Yeah. But photographs of the human condition are just.
They're amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how does it feel to live with an image like this?
Feels lucky,
Okay.
to be living in where we are, and seeing that this is a gold mine in Brazil, and just the human condition of what people have to go through and live to survive on a daily basis, and how sort of the irony in this, because there's always that Jesus figure in there.
Right. Does everybody, the religious iconography of the man standing against somewhat of the cross. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. I have a Salgado quote somewhere.
And it's just such a powerful photograph.
Yeah. It really is. I think he shot these with a large format camera, if I remember correctly. Does anybody in here know? No.
Seems more like 35mm ratio, but
The grain does too.
just the proportion, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
That's not what I remember back when they were first published, but anyways. Salgado said, "You cannot prejudge anything. You must go inside another man's head. Take the time to learn his world." Can we open it up to questions?
That it?
You ready?
Sure.
You turn the lights on. I feel like we should raise this because there's photos here. Might do that. Jeff? Can you help me?
I can try.
Yeah, okay, Liz has a question
Were
in
we
the back.
going to talk about the Maplethorpe?
That there could be a phase two.
Sure. That'd be fun. It's really great seeing these photographs have never looked better than this. They hung the show so amazingly well. I've never seen them in this great light, and Josh's show is just hung so beautifully.
Well, I should mention, this show was, Mark invited us to come take a browse through photographic paradise, and actually Mitch Weiss, another local photographer from Putney, also a aficionado expert of the black and white photograph, he and I co-curated a selection. I mean, any grouping of people could have walked through that office and selected any number of different iterations of exhibitions. So it was a at times agonizing process of deciding which Newman or which Cortege. I know Mark was particularly fond of the two of them, and we ultimately ended up including multiple. But trying to go for as broad of a selection of both subject matter and historical context and background of the artists themselves. But we're just very, very fortunate to have had the opportunity. But any other questions?
Yeah, other questions,
I
yeah.
know there's
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. It was delightful to see the Walker Evans' photograph of James Agee.
Yeah.
It's over there.
Yeah, it's on the next to the Dorothy Lane, which is well known.
Yeah.
But when we think of Walker Evans, I mean, in general, I would make this assumption, I say this, that we don't think of a portrait.
Right.
We think of those austere, elegant, simple marvels, particularly in 1936 in the South, those that were part of Let Us Now Praise.
Right.
But James, what I wanted to ask you, Mark, because James Agee is very, emotionally and in a literary sense, very dear to my heart. When I came across Let Us Now Praise, it's a remarkable piece of writing. He's a really humble, spiritual individual. And I was just delighted to see his photograph, and I was wondering, what is your relationship with Agee or Evans or that photograph and that photograph? How did that happen that you have that?
I remember reading that Jimmy Carter's favorite book was Let Us Praise, and that's what made me read that book a lot in college, I guess. And then thinking how that related to all those FSA photographs and all that, and that's what sort of drew me to that, and that's probably drew me to the photograph too.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
You know Walker Evans's body of work to a degree.
I have some of his photographs that I bought when I was in Washington D.C. at the Library of Congress. You could buy photographs then.
You still can.
Yeah.
You used to be able to buy them for $6,000 bucks.
Right, and I've got some, and they were printed on Agfa paper. They
They were the real thing,
They were the real thing. It was pretty amazing.
Because they belong to us.
because
Right.
they belong to us, yeah.
It's a haunting photograph of Agee. I thought.
Yeah.
Really, it's. Whew. Well, he was. Yeah.
Other questions? Yeah.
Curious, Mark, to hear you talk about sort of separately but related to the image, the actual prints, because I feel like what's so amazing looking at this work, sort of one thing to see the images on the screen or online, but to actually see the prints in person and just how you sort of relate to the prints, or if there are certain photographers whose prints you're particularly drawn to, or if there's anything that you can kind of, any insight add to to the actual nature of the print?
That's a great question, and that's something that, in looking at these photographs and why I have these photographs, that, you have to do sort of searching, soul searching. And so sometimes I start looking at some books of these photographs and then seeing people who are a lot smarter than me talk about why this photograph is so great. And I'm like, oh, I guess that's why I like it. You know what I mean?
Are most of these printed by the photographer?
Yes. And that's what makes it kind of special, to know that their hand is on that, because something that strikes you, sometimes you can't really intellectualize that much, So it makes something that I've had that felt impulsive feel a lot less impulsive. Looking at that,
Yeah, there's a little Man Ray up in the corner over there.
Yeah.
And when I asked you about it, you were like, he printed it. And I was like, okay, that's a really good reason to want it.
Yeah.
Other questions in the back? Sure.
Oh God.
Thank you so much for all of this. It's so wonderful. It's really nice to see the voice that culminates in all of them, because you've collected them, and it feels like there's a continuity from one to the next because you're the one who's choosing them.
Really, because it's funny, because I think the exact opposite. I feel like why did I like it then, and then now I like something totally.
Well, this is my question. Actually, it's two-part, if I can remember the other one. But I know, Paul.
Vaughn, why don't you stand up so we can actually hear you?
When you want to buy a picture, when you want to buy a photograph, I'm wondering what happens to you that makes you be like, that's the one. And it makes me think of Lil Farber, and the first time that I went to see her photographs, and she takes you through her barn and she does the thing, and she's like, and then my palms got sweaty and my heart, and I had to have it. And the one time that I bought something because I thought I should buy it, but I didn't have that feeling, that was the one I shouldn't have gotten. And so it makes me wonder, I do see a continuity with it, and I'm wondering if it's a historical thing, if it's they printed it, or what that is that makes you want to get that image. And I want to see all the other ones too.
Some of it's like, you look at this and think, oh God, this is like, I've since actually resold a few photographs that I initially bought early because I thought, oh, I've always wanted an Aaron Siskin photograph, and I get this Aaron Siskin photograph, and then after it sits on my wall for a year or two, and I realized that it just felt vapid, and then now, as I've been collecting, I realize what strikes me and what I like more and what I like less, and so I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but it sometimes when you see something and you realize I realized that a bunch of photographs I have were in a John Skarkowski book, looking at photographs. And it's a book, it's a book that I'm sure I was looking through a whole bunch. All of a sudden, here's a very familiar photograph, and all of a sudden it's kind of available, and it's within something that seems like affordable or whatever, and you get it, and so I don't know if that answers part of the question why, but that's one of the reasons. And some, I've got some photographers that they're not famous photographers at all, but the image just sort of, speaks to me,
Well, I can't remember what the other part two was, so I'll give up that time to Paul.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you for. So I was wondering, you've been collecting photographs since you're like 13 or something, and if you look at, can you see themes that were present at various stages of your life that drew you to certain photographs?
I think earlier ones were photographs that had more patterns in it. It's something that was easily for me to relate and understand. Like the cortege.
Which one?
The ones that had the Washington Square Park. You know, it's easy to sort of understand and relate and all that. And then you look at later on, you look at Freelander, and that certainly those have patterns and stuff like that too, but it's much more sophisticated in terms of, and understanding, you know, composition and stuff like that makes. And
I think it was the Cortez, the tulip,
Yeah.
and the woman on the sofa.
yeah,
There was something about those two being next to each other that
Yeah.
completely blew my mind. And I think if I just saw that, I would go, oh,
Yeah.
you know, can either of you guys tell me why that's blowing my mind so
The
much?
two together.
Yeah, because I don't know, but like, I'll never see one without the other. There's something about the way that they went to, and was that intentional? And
Both just such extremely gestural pieces that
There you go.
I,
Josh has a reason.
gestural is all I got.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, look at the Ruth Bernards. Those two
Yeah.
Ruth Bernards, you know. You can,
Yeah. Go ahead.
That's what it is.
Looking back at this journey that you've had collecting these pieces, can you point to any lessons either of collecting or indeed in the practice of photography that you have taken from these images?
Sometimes I think, like, as you go through life, certain things are more and less important to you. And that kind of gets reflected in terms of what certain things seem visually more interesting or more intellectual or less intellectual. And I think that, you know, when you're younger and you watch movies, right? There's certain movies that you can watch and you love, and then as you get older, it's like you hate them.
Yes.
You know, and sometimes this feels like that with photographs too, with me. You know, I don't know.
That's why you've let go of some.
How
of
about
them.
you?
I don't know. I was thinking about the themes question, and I feel like there are themes, but I also feel like there's a very wide range of types of photography here. And I think that was one of the things that interested me most when I went to go talk to you when we decided we would do this, was like trying to figure out what were the motivations for you to buy certain photographs and what were those themes. And so like the James Agee picture, you talked about history, like how that was a piece of history for you. And we talked about the Leonard Freed and how that was just joy. Like
Right.
that picture is just pure, unadulterated joy, the one with the fire hydrant. And that there were all these different, there were just different things going on in so many of them. And there's one right in the back it's a Elliot Erwitt picture of a cow licking somebody's head from the county fair. And
That's
it's
Gary
just,
Winogrand.
Oh, Gary Winogrand,
Winogrand.
right. Sorry. It's really funny. It's a very humorous photograph.
Or that Imogene Cunningham, Judy Dater of Imogene Cunningham with
Yeah.
Cuenca.
So there's just, to me, there's like, I mean, they're all black and white photographs, right? There's no color in here.
No.
You know, they're all silver gelatin prints. So they fit in a certain box, but there's a huge variety within your collection, which is amazing and
Yeah.
great and really fun for us.
Lynn, I wonder what fascinates me as someone who works in a gallery setting is the importance of the setting and where these photographs live. I mean, Arnold Newman's portrait of George O'Keeffe was in a guest bedroom of Mark's home, and And I won't even tell you where Gary Winogrand was.
Oh, in the bathroom?
I'll let you
Yeah.
answer. At the office. But I wonder how our understanding of art, let alone photography, changes when it's
In the space.
In space.
in a formally lit, beautifully wall painted, well
Thank you, Josh.
laid out with beautiful labels and an excellent font choice and so thoughtfully spaced, how that changes our relationship to photos versus the photographs that we live with, that we see every day next to our dining room table, in our guest bedroom, in our bathroom, in the hallway on the way to the mudroom, you know, I mean, in your office, something that you may intentionally or unintentionally look to in moments of transition between tasks, or in moments of frustration about something at work, and you step back from your computer and there you see George Tice staring at you. How does, and I guess it's a more broad question, I mean, how, if you have any thoughts about how the setting of where we enjoy work, and does all artwork have to be consumed in a sterile, clinical museum environment, and what those relationships are like for you?
You know, I'd like to say there's like a lot of thoughtfulness in there, but there really is not. You know, and that there was a wall, and I had this great photograph, and I really love it, and I just wanted to hang it. And,
beyond your intention of why you hung it where, I mean, it's like what you were saying earlier, how like, you know, your office doesn't have the same kind of lighting, and it was salon style, floor to ceiling, and how just a different context and setting where they might make you notice or appreciate a photo in a different way than you may have previously, where it was hung in your home or your office or whatever.
I think there's definitely something about seeing images hung in this way and with this lighting that makes you take a minute and not just pass them by.
it makes it a lot more deliberate in terms of you're looking and understanding it a little bit more.
But I, you know, in my own home with the photographs that I have, and I don't have anything like this, but I have one or two that I really love over the years that I've collected, and I care a lot about where they are and seeing them every day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm like, oh, there's my friend. You know, again, I don't have this varied a collection, so they're pretty specific to the place they are in my home.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's mine personally.
Is everything you collect on paper images, any early stuff?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you have any early material, Daguerrean photographs or ambrotypes?
No, I don't. I don't have any daguerreotypes or anything like that.
Should we mention the Nathan Lyons is a platinum? That's the only non-silver gel image in this room.
Mark, are you still very hungry?
Am I?
For acquisition.
Well, and that begets my question. Is there one photograph that you look at every time and say, wow, I can't believe I got that one?
That's how I feel about mine.
God, I mean, a lot of these. Yeah, I mean,
Is there one specific one?
no, there really isn't, and some of it is kind of like the mood I'm in that day. You know how there are certain photographs that I like more one day than the next, but all of them are and it's funny because there are some photos I look at and I'm like, well, why do I like that photograph? And I always really like that photograph, and you know it's like I've always liked that booba back there, you know, that the tree with the chicken in it, you know, and you know I've always enjoyed that. I always liked the Twinka. I've always liked that Soldago. I mean, and some you like because they're kind of sentimental, you know, because you remember where you were when you saw that or first saw that photograph, or You know, like when I think of, you know, like that Washington Square, not only because it was my first photograph, but because I bought that, but because my sisters gave me the book that had that photograph in it, and how nice it, how, you know, was, and that, you know. So, or like, you know, the Harry Callahan stuff. I remember working in a photography shop in Cambridge, and I remember a photographer, Henry, was it Henry Hornstein, or either it was Joe DeMaio, started talking about this guy, Harry Callahan, who he just would take photographs of, just like thousands of photographs of his wife and all that. So I thought, I started looking at those great, and I remember I had a girlfriend at the time, and I just started taking like thousands of photographs, or and so, you know, I look at that photograph and I think of what my mind was, where my mind was at that time in high school, you know, taking all those photographs, and, you know, and then realizing and then reading about Harry Callahan and how, you know, he really wanted to photograph what he knew was close to him, and his wife, and how much he loved her, and taking pictures of Eleanor all through the years, and how touching that really is, whatever.
Maybe
You're
that's
talking about an emotional response.
Yeah,
in all these
absolutely,
instances.
absolutely. And then you look at some of Harry Callahan's stuff, like his photos of weeds and snow, and how some of them approximated like nudes or whatever, but, you know, it made you look at photographs and going outside in a different way than you ever thought. You know, there's not a time I don't go outside in the winter and I see grass coming out of the snow that I don't think of Harry Callahan's photographs.
Maybe make this our last question.
Better be good.
Well, I'm interested in how you told about when you were young, first photographing, that you were influenced by the pictures that you saw and were first collecting. I'm curious, are you still both collecting and photographing, and do you still continue to be influenced in what you're photographing by what you're collecting?
Well, I'm not photographing really now, other than just sort of family stuff or whatever. But I am still collecting, you know, and I'm much more careful about the images that I'm looking at and for, you know. But yeah, I am still, sure. And there's some images that I've had that I realize don't kind of hold up in terms of what I like and whatever. Every photographer has some good and bad photographs, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Any last fleeting things?
How long is the show up?
The show, last day will be March 1st. You have 2 more weeks. BCP is open Wednesday through Sunday, 11 to 5. So please share with anyone that you may know who may like to lay their eyeballs upon some fine silver.
And 1 platinum.
And you know, thank you guys all for coming, because
This is amazing.
yeah, because, you know, not only was it maybe nice for you, but at least for me to have a base to think about and understand the work that I have here, and that I have, it, you know, makes me much more appreciative of some of the stuff, and thoughtful, and thinking about why I like things, and, you know, it's I don't know. Well, thanks for that.
It's a huge gift.
Yeah.